70% of all gold production in the U.S. comes from a single state, Nevada. Conventional wisdom says that all the good deposits have been found. But one geologist who's discovered more than 30 million ounces of gold says he knows where to find Nevada's missing gold. And right now, he may be on the verge of being proven right. Investors and speculators can learn more at futuremoneytrends.com/gold. Greetings and thank you for joining us at futuremoneytrends.com. I have a great guest for you guys today, a real serial entrepreneur, somebody who has seen massive success. And he's also a great mentor to thousands, tens of thousands of libertarians and anarchists. I guess libertarians are just aspiring anarchists, but really a great guy and somebody who's taught me a lot and really actually even touched on, and we'll touch on it in this interview, changed my parenting style. So please help me welcome Jeff Berwick to the show by going to dollarvigilante.com. It's one of the best sites out there. It's one of the most needed sites. He really saw a problem with the currencies and the central planners and created Dollar Vigilante as a solutions-based website. It's unlike most of the other websites and newsletters that talk about the crisis, the coming crisis, or the structural depression. It's filled with a lot of suggestions and solutions that are not just the typical, here's your stock pick of the month. This is a great newsletter, and it'll help diversify your life outside of the U.S. If you're listening to this in the United States. So, Jeff, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Well, sir, I want to get right into the state of kind of the politics. You're an anarchist, but I have to guess that it's probably pretty entertaining watching Trump really strike back at the empire here.
It's definitely interesting. This has been much different than pretty much every last election that I can ever remember, really, in the U.S. I think for the first time, Americans have finally started just a little tiny bit realize that this whole two-party system is a complete and utter joke. And we're starting to see that now. If you think about it, I've always laughed at it. I'm originally from Canada. And at least up there, you have more than two parties. You have literally 4 or 5 parties, and maybe even more than that. And a lot of them even get in because it's sort of this, I guess, parliamentary system that they have in most other places. But in the U.S., I always kind of laughed at it. It's like there's only 2 choices. Like there's got to be more than 2, isn't there? No, just 2. And then, as we all know, it all turned out that it's basically just one choice. It really is no choice. It's just basically choosing the face you want to see on TV for the next 4 years. But they're going to do the exact same thing. That's what happened after George W. Bush, and people thought, oh, there couldn't be worse than that. And then they brought in Barack Obama, who won the Nobel Peace Prize about a month into being president and has gone on to attack and occupy numerous countries and continues to drone bomb wedding parties and men, women, and children around the world. So I think finally people are just starting to wake up because they're so propagandized in the U.S. The mainstream media is so strong there that people have no idea. But thanks to the internet, and I think that's the reason, people have started to realize that this is all a big sham. It's a big show, and it's just basically to keep them enslaved. And so I think we're starting to see for the first time some semi-outsiders. Of course, Bernie Sanders isn't really an outsider, but he's a little different. He's not your typical politician guy who just does everything that his bosses tell him, like every other president has. And on the other side is Donald Trump, and he's a semi-outsider as well. He's not your typical politician at all. And so that's why those two have really shaken things up. And people are looking for something different. But I think what they're going to find out is that by the end of November, it's going to be say goodbye to the old boss, say hello to the new boss. It's the same thing. And I actually think Hillary Clinton will win. I'm actually quite positive about that. She's been selected already. These aren't elections. These are selections. She's been selected. And I think if you just look at the demographics as well, if you look at what happened with Barack Obama, he's half black, so we have to vote for him. This is different. And now, of course, a woman. And, of course, 50% of the population in the U.S. are women, and most of them are dumbed down and on antidepressants and heavily medicated. And so they'll probably just vote for Hillary, which will that's going to really be scary when that happens.
Yeah, you imagine all the hundreds of millions of dollars that have been sent to the Clinton Foundation, and then even before that, when he was president, there's too much money invested in these guys to lose at this point. You're down there in Mexico. What do you hear anything from the locals talking about the U.S. election this year? Because Mexico has been really spotlighted in this year's election.
Really, I don't know about other parts of Mexico. No one down here in the deep south. I'm in Acapulco, which is the fourth most dangerous city in the world, according to the CIA, but it's really not all that dangerous. But the people here don't even pay attention to what's going on in the U.S. If they do, they just laugh at it, and they don't talk about it. It's really just, like I said, if they bring it up, if anyone brings it up, they'll just laugh. They'll just say, "Oh, what a joke," and that's about the end of it. It's really not tied into all this politics stuff like in the U.S. In fact, down here, people mostly hate the government. And that's why I spend most of my time down here. I'm amongst like-minded people. In fact, just last week, there was a big thing in the news about a bunch of cartel people went and attacked all the police here in Acapulco. So the people here don't like the police. They don't like the government, and that's the way I like it as well. I'm not in favor of going and attacking them with guns and killing them. But if other people do it, I'm not losing a lot of sleep at night crying.
Yeah, I almost feel like a guy like Ron Paul was like just 4 or 5 years too late. He's too old, but really this is probably the revolution that he deserved to ride into, as far as the the pitchforks and throw the bums out moment that the U.S. may have. But like you said, it's just replacing a different form of statism with the current oligarchs that are in there now. And one guy, it's just too much to change. Jeff, with the currencies, we're seeing a lot of action, specifically with gold. Gold has been rallying big for the past 18 months to 2 years in other currencies outside of the U.S. dollar. But now in 2016, in the U.S. dollar, it is also rallying, and they're actually having a pretty nice move today. What are your current thoughts on the U.S. dollar and really this whole negative interest rate policy that the central banks have turned to? Is this kind of the unraveling that you had predicted?
Yeah, I think it is. We've seen that basically since the start of the year. We've seen just a complete shift. We've seen gold and silver really start to move for the first time in a long time, and looking very strong. Bitcoin is another thing I watch because Bitcoin, unlike gold and silver, is less manipulated. And of course, a lot of people say, "Oh, you believe in manipulation?" Well, once again, Deutsche Bank was just found out to be manipulating the gold and silver market. Of course, every market's manipulated, and actually, manipulation shouldn't be anything that's illegal or anything, but the gold and silver markets are heavily manipulated. So I like to watch Bitcoin as a better indicator of what's really going on. And it's actually been an excellent indicator. Back during the Cyprus bank bail-ins, Bitcoin tripled within about 2 months, which it should have done, and gold and silver did nothing. When you have a fairly decent-sized country in the Eurozone that just takes all the people's money that's in their bank accounts and no one really says too much about it, you should see things like gold and silver skyrocket, but they didn't. But Bitcoin did, and Bitcoin since last summer has doubled. It was under $230 last summer, and I was very public about it last summer, saying this is a total buy. This is probably the best buy I've seen, and I've been in Bitcoin since $3 in 2011. And so Bitcoin now has been doing very well. It's looking very strong. I think what's really happening here is we're reaching the end of the central banking system. They've run out of options. They've been trying to just keep this thing alive as long as they can. Now they're gone into negative interest rates. They've tried quantitative easing 1, 2, 3. It's like the Rocky movies almost now. Just keep coming back, and we will fix it this time. And I think you're seeing with the Bank of Japan just last night actually saying they're not going to ease as much anymore. We're seeing the European Central Bank saying that they're not going to continue to ease forever, and that's put a lot of pressure on the Fed. And the Fed, of course, has been at 0% interest rates for 7 years until last December, which is absolutely insane and unheard of. And most people don't even know or talk about it. And then they increased it by 0.25% in late December of last year, and it nearly crashed on all the stock markets in the world. January was just a bloodbath in the markets, and that was just 0.25%. So ever since then, Janet Yellen's been humming and hawing about another 0.25. Yeah, we're going to do it for sure, but well, maybe June, well, maybe September. It's just this game is over, and as more people start to realize that, they're going to start to move to things like outside of the currencies in the financial system, like precious metals, Bitcoin, and other assets.
Jeff, in Dollar Vigilante, what are your readers, or I guess what are your editors most concerned about right now, and what are the solutions that they're presenting to readers?
Well, we've been concerned since 2010. That's when we started the Dollar Vigilante, and it was started with the tagline, surviving and prospering during and after the dollar collapse. And I said in 2010 when we started that I started it because after 2008, 2009, that to me was the clarion call. That was the ringing of the bell that this system is now dead, and now we just have to wait until it dies. And I said in 2010 that I thought the currencies would all collapse, all fiat currencies, sometime between 2015 and 2020. So we just entered into that last year. Last year was incredibly chaotic. The third quarter of last year, which was the Shemitah period, which I've talked a lot about, was the worst quarter in the stock markets globally since the last Shemitah in 2008. And then the one before that was in 2001. Happens every 7 years. The people on Wall Street call it the 7-year cycle. So we've been seeing just this total collapse scenario continue on. Most people don't realize it still yet, and they're not going to probably realize it until it's too late. So we've been, it's not so much that we have any new news here about what we're worried about. We've known this is going to be happening. We're actually all prepared for it and all positioned properly for it. There's not really too much new things that we've been surprised by. I guess I'm surprised they've gone so negative interest rates so quickly and started to move towards a cashless society so quickly. I've been amazed at how quickly they've rolled that out. So if anything I would say about what surprised me, it's the speed in which this whole thing is coming apart at the seams.
Yeah, no, and it's so funny, so coordinated, the whole cashless society thing. You know, it's happening for years and years and years, and all of a sudden it gets pushed big time by the press to kind of let everybody know it's coming. But when it's already been I think everything's digital anyway now, as far as I'm concerned. Jeff, on parenting, I saw you in, I want to say 2013 at the Liberty Symposium. You talked about, kind of being like an advisor as a parent, and that really struck with me. And I had young kids. I think I've added a kid since then. I have at least, I definitely added one. So I got 3 kids now. And my wife and I, we homeschool the kids, and we just really focus on almost like really helping them pursue their own passions. And my goodness, teaching kids to read and stuff by doing what they want to do. My goodness, you'd be, the world would be shocked at how quickly a child can pick up reading or anything else when you're helping them pursue their own passions and live their own life purpose. So anyway, just to kind of introduce people, because I know that you're the type of person, you learn a lot, you're constantly expanding and updating, I would say. What is your current view on parenting?
Well, it hasn't changed. I'm like you. I'm a parent as well. I have a 9 and 11-year-old now. And I sort of started to understand this philosophy of peaceful parenting and things like unschooling about 3 or 4 years ago, around the time I talked about it, I guess, when you heard me. And it's been phenomenal. Absolutely. And the more that you think about it, the more you realize this whole education paradigm is just another propaganda scheme by the powers that be to keep us dumbed down, to keep us in line, to keep us obeying authority. I treat my kids like they're just little adults who live in my house, and I don't tell them what to do, and I just advise them. And so you brought up a good point about reading. My son was around 8, I think, and he still didn't know how to read, and I hadn't forced him to do it at all, and I don't force him to do anything. And my wife started to get concerned, and I said, don't worry. These little kids are like sponges. When he wants to learn how to read, he'll learn to read in literally a week. It will be that fast. And she didn't believe me, and that's what happened. He came up to me. He was playing on his Xbox, and he said, Papa, I don't understand what the text on the screen says about this game. And I went, oh, it's too bad you can't read. This is so interesting. He's like, what's it say? What's it say? And I was like, okay, I'll read it to you this time. But you should should look into this. This is amazing. And so I'd read it to him. And then a week later, I came back in. He's reading and writing, and because he wanted to learn. Kids, and actually adults as well, but kids are just a lot more bigger sponge. Adults can learn very quickly as well when they want to learn. When you try to force someone to learn, that's just another form of slavery. It's another form of violence, and it actually teaches kids and adults to not want to learn because they find it so painful. That's a whole philosophy that many people don't know a lot about, that they should really look into. Those public schools, I call them government indoctrination camps, they're so bad in so many ways, and that's just one of them, is just forcing them. I remember when I was in school, I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I found any way I could to not go to school, but I wanted to learn. What I was interested in was computers at the time. This is 1986 or 1984, and the computers just came out. The school didn't even know what it was, and that's all I wanted to learn about. And no, they forced me to go down there and remember dates of when some president did something awesome that saved us, which is obviously just all lies and wrong, and memorize. That's all they want. The whole education system is based on the Prussian system. If you look into this, just look up Gatto is his last name. He was the New York District School Teacher of the Year for many years, until he realized what the whole system was, and then he spent his whole life telling people to get them out of school, because it's essentially training them to become soldiers, to fight in wars, or to become factory workers and to obey authority and show up at 9, leave at 5, don't ask any questions. That's what all those bells are at for school. It's like zzz, it's like training them to obey, and that's if you want a really amazing, creative, interesting, dynamic, non-slave-like child, don't put them into those sort of systems. Let them grow, let them create, and it sounds like that's what you've been doing too.
Yeah, and it is amazing, when you think about like the biggest worshiping of American leaders or presidents is really registered by how many people died under their leadership. If you killed more people, you get a bigger monument. You might become a whole semester or something. I have to say, the biggest thing I'm embarrassed about is I remember coming home from that conference, and I had a serious talk with my wife, because you had stated something that was so common sense, but I guess you get indoctrinated and conditioned that I never thought of it. Even though I was moving the libertarian route and anarchist route, I was still spanking my kids. And I remember leaving that conference after you had talked about it, and it was just so common sense that hit me in the face. It's like, I don't hit my wife. I don't hit the UPS person if I'm upset with them. I don't hit anybody. Why in the hell am I, as a 200-pound man, hitting these little 35-pound bodies? This makes no sense. I literally took my kids to the side and I apologized to them and said it'll never happen again. And wow. Anyway, I just want to tell you, if there's one thing that really changed my life, and spanking kids. I mean, does it just blow you away? Because it really has no effect. And by the way, not spanking the kids completely eliminated the violence that was going on around this house between the siblings.
Absolutely, it changes everything when, these are like little tiny new humans on this earth, and what you're saying to them when you hit them is, this is how we resolve conflicts. So if there's a problem and I don't like something, somebody's going to get hit. That's what you're teaching them, and they learn, of course, first of all, to try to avoid getting hit by trying to sneak around and lie, and you just lose just like anything. Whenever violence is involved, it just destroys the whole dynamic. And once you just start treating them like I don't know if I ever told you this story, but my daughter was on like a 6-foot ledge. She was only about 3 feet tall at the time, and she said, "Papa, I'm going to jump off." And I said, "Well, I wouldn't." And she said, "Why?" And I said, "You're only 3 feet tall. That's twice your height. You could break an ankle or something. It'd really hurt." And she said, "Really?" And I said, "You can try it if you want. Don't just listen to me. Make up your own mind, or just try it. Adventure a little bit. But here's what I would do." And she's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Try jumping from 3 feet first." And she did. And she said, "Whoa, that was okay." I said, "Okay, well, try a little bit more now. Try 4." And she tried that. She said, "Well, that was a little scary." And then she stopped at 5 feet. And she said, "Yeah, you're right. I'm not ready for 6 feet yet." And a lot of other parents would hit them. And then what's that teach? It's when you think about it, like you pointed out, it's shocking and astonishing that any of us ever thought that hitting kids was something that we should do, or something that we should not be doing. For example, is hitting kids. As you pointed out, these are just tiny little human beings. Of all the people on the planet that we shouldn't be violently aggressing against, you would think it'd be that. But it's all put in through the system. The system wants to ingrain you in this sort of violent system. The government system itself is incredibly violent and extortion based, and that's why the whole society is screwed up. And so one good thing is the more that people like yourself wake up and realize that those kids are going to grow up and be a lot less indoctrinated, a lot less obeying of authority, a lot more likely to use their own brain and think about things rather than just accept what people tell them and memorize it and then try to avoid getting hit if they get it wrong. So that's how, they always say the future is the children, and it actually is true. And if we can raise a generation of children who haven't been violently beaten just because they did something their parents didn't want them to do, that can change a lot. So hopefully we can slowly change the world that way. But as you pointed out, it just changes the whole dynamic. Our house is the exact same as you pointed out. It's amazing. A lot of people say, oh, isn't it crazy? Aren't they just eating ice cream at 3 a.m. and blowing off fireworks? It's like, no. Both my kids on Halloween, they got a bunch of candy a couple of years ago. And they started eating a bunch of it, and I didn't tell them not to. But what I did say was, do you know you're not going to feel really good if you eat all of that? And they didn't believe me, and they ate it all. And the next day, they both came out and said, oh, we're never doing that again. And I'm like, I tried to tell you. And they're like, we got to listen to you more.
It's funny that when you said that story, I was thinking my son got 2 fillings. He's like 5. He was 5 at the time. He's 6 now. But he got 2 fillings at the dentist. And I swear, man, I don't ever have to tell that kid to brush his teeth. He's always in there brushing his teeth. So you learn from experiences. And a lot of times, I'm around other adults. They're just like freaking out around my kids because they're like, I'm not regulating them constantly. I'm not micromanaging them. And when it comes to the busybodies in society, it's funny is this, really learning the anarchist philosophy, the nonviolence. It's really almost like an independent freedom of your own mind and sovereignty. I remember hearing on the news when that Romney thing is like 47% of the people don't pay tax, and of course everybody that's conditioned goes, those 47 need to pay tax, and I'm sitting there going, what about the other 53? How can we get them not to have to pay taxes? So, well, hey, Jeff, you've been great. You're a really good guy. You got a great website. I hope everybody goes to dollarvigilante.com. I mean, right now, guys, with the junior mining stocks basically coming out of the worst bear market in decades, gold coming out of a severe bear market, and the underlying fundamentals, whether you're looking at supply and demand, the technical analysis for the birth of a bull market, or everything the central planners are doing, you couldn't have picked a better year to subscribe to Dollar Vigilante. Jeff, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, sir.
My pleasure, as always.